Hey team, Katie here from Equestrian Movement, and today Sarah's going to demo some invitation to eat the grass and invitation to come off eating the grass. So one of the things that you'll hear me talk about is that there are, in our compassionate leadership skills, what we're looking for is how comfortable you are with giving your horse direction, how well they are taking direction, and if they are seeking you for direction. Now that doesn't mean that we need to use whips and treats and escalate to positive punishment because they're not listening to us and whatnot, but what it does mean is that if you're going to put yourself and your horse into a dangerous situation, like being on the side of the road, like going somewhere that doesn't have fences, like going on a trail ride that's not contained, you want to know that your horse can seek you for direction if they are starting to feel anxious or uncomfortable, or they don't know how to deal with a certain scenario, because that is in you and your horse's best interest for you and your horse's safety. And so one of the ways that we train an easier kind of version of coming off taking direction is asking the horses to come off the grass when we're ready to walk and giving them the invitation to eat when we're ready for them to have a break. So that where the grass is obviously very motivating, not here right now in Australia. We're in the end of winter and all the grass is very dry and it's not particularly lush and exciting to eat. But we can still practice, giving that cue to come off the grass and the reward for listening, and then the invitation to start eating again. To begin with, you're going to have to keep, the periods of time staying off the grass, particularly if it's lush, very short because of how motivating it is for them to eat the grass. But over time, you're going to stretch that period of time off grass out so that the horse is maintaining that connection mentally of their focus and their attention being on you and not being on the grass, and being able to take direction from you. So it is really important that if you want to sit on, these 600-900 kilo flight animals, that they have the capacity to hold their focus and attention on you, to stay connected in relationship to you, to move with them in integration with the physical movement with you. That's the goal. That's what we're trying to achieve, because the horse that is mentally, physically and emotionally resistant to you and not wanting to be with you and not wanting to carry you becomes a lot harder to work with and to ride, and it's just not really a positive experience for anyone. So doing super achievable exercises for both you and your horse means that there's a little bit of escalation of pressure there, because Gunnar found a patch that was enticing. Being able to keep the horse with you is a much better way of working with the horse than what I grew up with, where you have to just push them through it and punish them if they weren't listening to you, be scarier than the thing that they're scared of, like all of those things. They just don't create a good relationship with the horse, where the horse wants to look after you and you want to be working with and riding your horse. All of the people that do a good job of their training can do this. They can give direction without upsetting the relationship, and it's not necessarily because of punishment and threatening the horse and being the boss and making the horse do what you say every time you ask them to do something. It's about being somebody that the horse wants to take direction from and that wants to follow your lead. And also just being able to listen. You want the horse to listen to you, then you also need to be listening to your horse. When we learn to ride, particularly if you learn to ride at a riding school, everybody learns how to tell a horse what to do, but not everybody gets to learn that just because you can tell a horse what to do doesn't mean they will do it. That's why we have the saying of you can lead the horse to water but you can't make it drink, is that just because you've learnt how to tell the horse what to do doesn't mean you're going to be able to make them do everything that you want every time you ask. And so that's why we're practicing the invitation onto the grass and off the grass is, oops, I missed that, is how are you going to keep the horse taking direction from you when they've got things that are just a little bit more motivating to them, like a bag of hay. So a carrot treat is definitely one way of keeping your horse's focus on you and not on the bag of hay. So Sarah's giving her cue to ask him to move away from the hay, and then when he says yes and he responds nicely, she is giving him that little carrot treat, especially when the grass is more exciting than following Sarah. So you really can come up with your own cue as to what this is going to look like for you. Ideally, you're going to find something that feels really natural to you, that feels comfortable for you to do when you're giving them the invitation to eat. So the step back and the hand is generally the cue that we use purely because it makes sense to us to do it that way. So you don't want to make it a cue that feels confusing to you to actually do, because then you won't do it. So that's why we do our shaping plans as well, as how are you going to guide the horse into the behavior you're looking for. So how are you going to give the horse the clear invitation to eat the grass? How are you going to give the horse the clear invitation to stop eating the grass? How are you going to mark that that was what you wanted so that they know that that's the correct answer? How are you going to motivate them to do it again? So particularly if they find something that they really want, like the hay bag or the lush grass, you're going to be able to have something that's just a little bit more motivating than the lush grass or the hay to tell them to come off the grass. So you also can wait for a cue from them that they're also ready, so that you're not getting yourself into an argument. So Sarah's giving Gunnar a little cue and invitation that she's ready to keep walking, and Gunnar is definitely saying, I'd prefer to just stay here and eat. But then he said, yep, okay, I'll follow. And so then again, you know, we're looking at that space between. So the space between the ask and the response, it doesn't have to happen straight away. In fact, we don't necessarily want it to happen straight away, because then that's a reactive trigger due to feeling threatened and going to get our horses feeling defensive or scared. Bye. Can you get through that way? Just watch the plover that's in the arena now. So we're looking at this being a two-way conversation with knowing that the horse is going to want to eat the grass, and knowing that you're going to want them to stop eating the grass. This is how we can practice how we show up in relationship with our horse in these compassionate leadership exercises. I didn't think that gate would work. It's a nice invitation off the grass there. And a nice invitation to walk. And so, you know, when we're working with our horses, and a nice little connection there, One of the things that I talk about also is that we can't expect them to, work and perform and do these things for us that are challenging with a smile on their face. It's like, you can't be expected to go to work and do your job with a smile on your face. You can do your job quite happily, but for me, I have resting bitch face on the whole time. So if I had that expectation of doing as I was told and doing my job with a smile on my face for the whole time, then it would really be unachievable. So we can expect to see some, little facial expressions and some body languages when they're being told what to do, especially with our horses that, fit into that protector role, which Gunner has moved more into since being in the herd. Within that protector role, they're less inclined to take direction, and you really have to work a lot harder to be somebody whose lead that they follow. So Sarah's giving the invitation, waiting for the response, and then just a small amount of escalation to be saying, hey, I definitely mean that I would like us to go this way. And so, how long have you been practicing this for, Sarah?
Probably at least every day for every time we work for 18 months.
Yeah, so Sarah's been working on this cueing for 18 months, so it's a lot smoother and he's taking that direction a lot better than he would probably take from me and from a lot of the other people who work here, because he understands what that conversation with Sarah is going to look like. And so when we develop a practice for something as simple as this, it means that if we're going to get ready to kind of stretch comfort zones and move into the outside of the safety net of where the horse feels safe and secure and connected, they're more likely to look to us to take that direction and listen to us, because we are showing up in relationship with them for giving them the invitation to take direction from us and what that's going to look like. You can see a lot more of what they're communicating with their body language. You can see a lot more of what you can read them a lot better when you start asking them to do things that are harder. So this is its own lesson plan that you can practice just as a way of spending time with your horse. Like if you want to take it out in hand grazing, we're using multiple different lesson plans, following my steps, matching steps, invitation onto the grass, invitation off the grass, seeking connection, consent, giving stop ready cues. There's so much potential, and we just kind of skim over these easy exercises because we just want to ride the horse. But just wanting to ride the horse like this makes a horse that is nicer to ride it, and you can have more trust and confidence in them, and they can have more trust and confidence in you because you're having these conversations. You know how to give your horse direction so that it's well received. You know what an argument is going to look like if they're going to protest coming off the grass. There's plenty of things that they protest when we're riding. Like if you think about horses that don't really like to walk away from the property, then you can be practicing this in hand first for building up that how far away from their comfort zone you can get. I found a particularly nice patch of dead grass there, so Sarah had to get a little bit stronger with the ask off the grass, and then she can reconnect after that escalated direction and then allow him to go back onto the grass. And so that's just the conversation that we're constantly having, is that they are going to follow our lead when we ask it of them, but we can also listen to them and follow their lead a little bit. So one of the quotes that I really like is first you go with the horse, then the horse goes with you, then you go together. And so what we're looking for is, what does team look like? So what team looks like is you also have to be comfortable with relaxing and just following the horse. He spotted the hay bag again. So he's torn between two choices. Does he follow Sarah or does he go to the hay bag? Oh, it's a very hard choice to make. Look. Okay. There is a lot of work to get that in the last 18 months for that to be a yes. And this is why we work on our relaxation and connection work, is that we can ask hard things of our horse and they can have a moment to think about it and still choose yes. And it's not because we've forced the yes from them, it's because of the way we've set them up previously and the previous experiences that we've had with them that shows them that the yes in that moment is the good choice to make, because we have their best interest at heart, and so we can take their focus and their attention off of something that they want to satisfy, what they want right now in the moment, and give them that later on after we've just done a little bit of work together. So this is also how we develop a positive work ethic and how we build relaxation into our focus and attention effort. And it starts with mental effort, right? If you think about sometimes the hardest thing that you can, the thing that gives you the most resistance about going down and riding your horse is pulling the tack out and actually tacking the horse up in the first place. Or if you think about in other times, is like how much time you spend procrastinating when you know you have to clean the house that day. So engaging the horse mentally in work is the biggest expense of energy and effort that they have to give. Once they're committed to being engaged in the work, then the work is a lot easier. But when we have that mental resistance to doing anything, that's when we're fighting the horse, because the horse is fighting his body. There's lack of congruence.
He's ready to go for a little adventure up the top.
Okay. So one of the things that we can tend to see when we're working with our horses is finding the limitations of their comfort zone, of the area of their environment that they feel safe in. We start to see a more activated nervous system where the horse is less likely to take direction. And so you want to incorporate that in your shaping plans of where is a green zone, where they're staying pretty relaxed and connected. When do we start to see that threshold being stretched where they're not taking the direction quite so well? And then all the way through the red zone would be where they can't take direction anymore and they're getting quite escalated and spooky and reactive. So Gunnar has gotten himself into adventure mode because we're going off property, and so you can see where he's not quite so relaxed, but the lack of relaxation is just eagerness. He's giving confident strides, not anxious strides. And the grass up here is a little bit nicer and greener, so he's going to be more inclined to eat this grass. When we're looking at stretching our comfort zones with our horses, we want to pay attention to the edges of it and allow it to be their choice to choose to stretch the edges of the comfort zone. We don't want to push them past it. We can do some things like set up some cones and set up some targeting, but ideally what we want to do is get them into that adventure mode, that curiosity, confidence through curiosity, where they adventuring into the new environment. So you can see where this is probably about the edge of Gunner's comfort zone, where he's stopped and he's surveying his environment, and you'll be able to see his ready cue when he's ready to go again. So Sarah's given him the invitation to follow, and you can just see where he's starting to feel less safe in that yes to follow. There's the yep there. And then Sarah can give him the invitation to eat the grass again. And so we can use it as a reinforcer and a motivator for choosing yes to following us, to stretching that comfort zone. And it's not going to get them into proper rest and digest while they're still alert of that they're on the edge of their safe zone, but allowing them to lower their head and eat, and we're standing guard at that time, is part of building that relationship where they want to take direction from us. So Gunner's found some good grass there. Sarah has to increase the ask a little bit more to get him to pay attention and take that direction. She needs to do a bit of a check-in with him because he's not listening very well. He's not moving out of her space very well. So there's a definite change of behavior at this line right here, which will be the boundary of Gunner's safe zone. But he did find some good grass at the edge of it, which is going to make him want to stay there a little bit more. So that one there, Gunner has dragged Sarah to the grass, and so she's pulling him off of it because she didn't give him the invitation to eat it. So we want to be clear and consistent with those boundaries. We don't want our horses dragging us to grass. We want our horses waiting for us to give them the invitation to eat, and then we want to have a way of saying no if they're trying to drag us to the grass. And so that's why we're going to start these conversations in the safe zone, where the horse has got more relaxation, because we've been working on relaxation first. And then we can start pushing it out of the comfort zone a little bit, and we start to see those slightly more exaggerated behaviors. And so that's part of our compassionate leadership skills, is that the horse might feel safe in relationship to us when it feels safe in its environment, but when we want to start going on trail rides and going out to events and going to different, like floating to other places, we need to be the anchor so that as the environment changes, they can feel safe and connected in relationship to us, because they don't know the environment, so they don't feel safe and connected because they feel safe within their environment. So that's the goal of our compassionate leadership skills, is that we're trying to build a relationship where there's trust and confidence in a safe environment for them to take direction from us, and we feel comfortable with giving direction and they're seeking us for direction, so that when we change the environment, then we're going to be able to reiterate, you're safe because you're with me and I'm going to make good choices for you, which means not overfacing yourself, not overfacing your horse. And so I like to do, you want to treat things like that as like a science experiment where you're only changing one variable at a time. When you just change one variable at a time, not only do you pick up on the thing that you changed that is a trigger for the horse, but you also don't completely blow over threshold and have to repair the quality of the trust and confidence in the relationship again. So one variable at a time allows you to know what their trigger is. It means that you don't drastically overface yourself and your horse and it ends in a really bad situation experience for the two of you. And it also allows you to see what you might need to focus your training on. So say for here, we can see that there's a certain line where Gunner doesn't want to continue past it. We can be working on our confidence through curiosity skills and getting him into adventure and explore mode to in his trainings, so that we can use that as a cue when it comes to stretching his comfort zone here. So when we look at our relaxation work, we've got, does your horse feel safe in itself? Does your horse feel safe in its herd? Does your horse feel safe in its environment? And does your horse feel safe in relationship to you? And that is the foundation of, there's a nice relaxation cue there. And he's like, yep, I'm ready to keep walking in this direction. And so again, we're looking at the space that is given between the ask and the yes. The space is really important for us to not hit reactivity, but to find that responsivity. Like they're actively, choosing, oh my goodness, the yes. It's not being forced onto them. And so we can maintain the quality of the relationship because we're not pressuring them and pushing them over threshold into a situation that we can no longer manage. There's absolutely no way that you can physically manhandle this horse. And yes, you can get yourself a certain ways with, if you were to use a whip, and negative reinforcement and positive punishment and that kind of thing, but it just would create a horse that feels anxious, that you don't want to sit on when you're riding, that is reactive, being in that protector role. They might start to have some more aggressive tendencies towards you. Being a draft cross, they tend to choose stubbornness and refusing to move if they think that they're not safe, which is what makes them a safer horse, is that when they feel scared or threatened, they choose freeze and they choose to refuse to move. They refuse to put themselves into a place where they feel more unsafe. So we want to see, stubbornness and refusal to move as, it's not necessarily work evasion. Quite often it can just be an I don't feel safe. We want to be able to tell the difference between refusal to move because I don't feel safe, refusal to move because they've lost balance, and if they do move they're going to trip, refusal to move because of us. So sometimes if they're going to wait for us to check ourselves and reset ourselves emotionally, if we're not being polite with how we're asking them to do things. Sarah's saying, I am ready to keep walking. Gunnar is saying, I have found a great patch of grass. And we're waiting for the ready cue. So Sarah's given the invitation and he's thought about it. He has not said I'm ready, but Sarah has said, well, I've asked you, so you're following. And so that's why this is, you know, such a good place for us to have those conversations with the horse, because it's just about grass. You know, we can't really break too much when it's about grass, when we're having this conversation about taking direction over grass. It can break a lot of things if we're having this conversation because we need our horse to follow us on the side of a road and there's a bunch of traffic going past, or if we're getting chased by a dog, or all of the other like stupid things that we can get ourselves into when we're riding horses. So we want to be having this conversation, and we want it to go well in an environment where everybody feels safe. It's low pressure, low stress. If they choose to not follow our direction, it's not going to kill anybody, it's not going to kill them, and we're going to work on it until they're comfortable with taking that direction well, so that if it comes to a situation, an emergency situation where you really need them to do it because you say so, you know that they're going to. And you want to try and reserve the do it because I say so to emergency situations. But you also want to know that if you do have to get into a place where you're going to say do it because I say so, that they're actually going to listen and not just argue with you and or have a meltdown because everybody's over threshold and nobody knows what to do and everybody's just reacting to everybody else. The battery's about to go flat.
Okay. I think he's reached that point anyway.
Yep.
It's nice to see him get all hyper vigilant.
Yeah.
Boss